It's the Texans Collective. Reggie Atatula from Sports Radio 610's In the Loop. Landry Locker from the Locker Room and one half of SNL. I'm the other half of SNL and Houston Football with Cody Stutes. It's free agency Monday. It is underway. And go ahead and put one on the board for the Texans of a player you've actually heard of. In just the past few minutes, the Texans, according to Mike Garafolo, coming to an agreement with safety Reed Blankenship, who most recently played with the Eagles, a 3-year, nearly $25 million deal, just over $16 million guaranteed. We'll talk about everything that the Texans have done today, including bringing back a couple of familiar faces, a new face in Reed Blankenship, and oh so much more. Appreciate a like and subscribe here on Texans Collective. But gentlemen, your initial reactions to a safety being the first notable addition since free agency got going earlier today at 11 a.m. for the Houston Texans.
We're just doing a stare off. I was like, look, man, I thought you were going to take your.
All right, cool. So Reed Blankenship, I really like the signing. No, what are you?
I wanted Landry to take his victory lap because you were the one who's been talking about the fact that they've invested at safety and they did it again.
Yeah, I think they left clues here that they valued veteran safeties that could do whatever they want them to do. Jimmy Ward was a guy who it was kind of an interesting extension, but they gave him an extension before all the off-field stuff happened and before the injuries became apparent. And then after they knew that he wasn't going to play, they swung at CJ Gardner-Johnson and ended up not working out. So heading into this offseason, I thought safety, I don't think they're just going to use that as like a stopgap type of position. And I did figure that perhaps they would be willing to invest in safety. And from what I've watched of Reed Blankenship, and it does feel like we all probably watched a healthy amount of Eagles football, he does seem to do the things that I think that they envisioned CJ Gardner-Johnson and Jimmy Ward doing in some way, shape, or form. He always seemed to be kind of around the ball. I'll be honest, I would always mix him up with Cooper DeJean because they stick out like sore thumbs. And I would say, wait, was that DeJean? No, that was Reed Blankenship. But I'm not overly surprised by them signing a safety like Reed Blankenship and investing what they did invest in him.
It really do be your own people, huh? No, I was just telling Cody before we started. This is one of my favorite genres in football, the white defensive back, man. I love that we're keeping this alive. I think Harrison Smith just walked out the building, so we got to have another one of these young boys holding it down. But in all seriousness, this is a dude who definitely has some ball hawk capabilities. Unfortunately, this past year wasn't exactly the year that he wanted. And it feels like if you come in and you fit into what the Texans want you to do, you can get into being the best version of yourself. I'm not going to lie, especially because of the way that free agency opens, or really, let's be honest, legal tampering period opens. This kind of feels like eating your dessert before you had your vegetables. You know, we've all been looking at, are you going to solidify your offensive line so your offense can come to the party too? And they were like, you know what we're going to do? Make sure this defense is awesome, which that's cool. That is a good thing to do, right? Making sure, because I'll be honest, I was kind of resigned to the idea that MJ Stewart could possibly hold it down if you felt like you'd seen progress from Jalen Reed, Jalen Reed, that maybe he could step in and be able to take that role on. But you're right. This is a position that they very much view highly, being able to come down and play at multiple levels as opposed to just being somewhat deep or whatever. So the idea that they went and handled this is not crazy surprising. It feels a little weird on this particular day when the only signing that we have offensive line wise is a dude that you had played on your offense last year.
Yeah, the once they brought back Sheldon Rankins, if you didn't think MJ Stewart or Jalen Reed was the starter at safety, there was one starting position available on defense. Now there are 0 starting positions available on defense. Reed Blankenship's going to start at safety. He's going to be the guy they run out there next to Kalen Bullock. They're going to have him play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. So that'll allow Bullock to go play that center field that he's had some success playing. And look, when Reed Blankenship is one of the less talented guys in the secondary, Reed Blankenship's a lot better football player. When you have to rely a lot on Reed Blankenship, like the Eagles did a few years ago, it didn't always look good. But with Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter and Kalen Bullock and Jalen Petrie, Blankenship's down the talent list, which means the impact should be a little bit better when you ask him to do exactly what that position has been asked to do. That was the big thing with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Didn't do what he's supposed to do. That's the big thing that I guess maybe Jalen Reed had an issue with because he's a young player. Didn't know what to do. Blankenship's played in this style of defense before, and now they have a guy that they trust to go out there and, they solidified this defense, and the defense got any better, and it's
solidified the defense. Yeah, they really needed that.
Yeah,
that's right. It was crying out for it, honestly.
Further solidified the defense beyond, and I guess D'Amico Ryan's pop up and say, look, we can't lose a shutout, so we'll just shut everybody out. So who knows what the offense is going to give them. But, a safety investment was not on my bingo card before they rounded out some of the things that people believe they needed on offense, most notably on the offensive line.
Yeah, now they've kind of filled out, like you said, all their starters. They've at least filled out the lineup card is the term that I've been using, where left guard is really the only spot where you definitely need someone other than Jared Patterson. So I do think this provides an opportunity to kind of swing for the fences in the draft and truly draft the best player available. Probably still want to draft a couple of linemen in the first 4 picks, but I'm not like one of these people who says you have to draft this many linemen. I think they've actually set it up to where they have decent opportunity to be able to perhaps get some value and get some guys that make massive impact at positions that maybe you don't consider to be at the very top. And it also kind of keeps them out of the safety market in the draft. I think it's safe to say they're not going to do that. And in this draft, I think especially on day 2, I think there could be a massive safety run because there's a hell of a lot of safeties. So every time someone else takes the safety, that gives you an opportunity to take a swing for someone else. So it also kind of sets the table for the draft, which I think is really the theme of today. The theme of today was basically just run it back and sit back. That's what I said. Run it back and sit back. And that's what they did. The Texans don't spend a lot of money in free agency. They get bargains, and then they overpay those guys after they get the bargain. So that's kind of like their way of doing business. They don't overpay in free agency. They overpay after they already have the guys in their building. So that's kind of what their philosophy kind of is right now.
Yeah, it does feel funny, though, when you talk about the possibility of getting value, because that feels like a kind of a dirty word around these parts, especially if we're talking about the offensive line, where it felt like this was an opportunity that you had to be aggressive. Obviously, it is day 1. There are still opportunities, and there's a lot of people to be tapped at the position that you really need to get to, the left guard. I know that there's more serious things to say, but I'm an unserious person. How many milk checks y'all think we getting out here? Right? Because remember last year when CJ Gardner-Johnson is gone, you got like the likes of Miles Bryant out there. You could see offenses going, hey, that dude, I want to see if you can defend. I feel like you're going to have that for all the wrong reasons. And so shout out to Reed Blankenship. I hope that the milk checks come back clean so that people remember that this defense is still real nice.
Yeah. So Reed Blankenship, the most recent addition for the Texans. We'll talk about Dominique Robinson much later. Before the day got going.
Will we?
Much later.
All right, they signed Dominique Robinson. Nobody's ever heard of him. He's probably not going to make the team. There you go. Before the day got going in tampering with free agency, the Texans brought back Sheldon, Rankins. They brought back Ed Ingram. I want to start with Ingram because if they had not brought back Ed Ingram, they'd be in a real world of hurt with the lack of activity on the offensive line. But Ingram comes back. Felt to me like it was a little bit below what he could have gotten in free agency. I know he's spoken to Aaron Wilson a couple times, and Aaron's tweeted out some of the quotes about how he liked his time here in Houston, good development, felt good about the situation. Ed Ingram back as the likely right guard for this team. What did you guys make of his return to the Texans early today?
I use the phrase "the devil you know," which feels uncomfortable because I don't want to call that man no level of devil. However, there's a level of comfort here, right? Especially when you talk about free agency and on the offensive line where things at least kind of are purported to possibly get crazy. And we saw a little bit of that with Tyler Linderbaum setting the top end of the center market 50% higher than it had previously been, right? Things can get a little crazy when you get out here in free agency. And it felt like the way that Nick Caserio has gone about a lot of this free agency or this offseason is just, I'm going to go and get things that I know are somewhat known quantities, right? Instead of waiting for free agency on running back, we're going to give a little capital and get something that we know. I think that Ed Ingram kind of fits a little bit in that range where a dude who came in and had one of his better seasons with you here, a dude that you felt comfortable with, a dude that showed some level of a capability to be a physical aggressor on the offensive line, specifically in the run. I got this. I got this from the perspective of narrow down the scope so that especially if you're having to go and throw the darts of free agencies in some ways, that you do it in a smaller pool. Now, I was hoping to see that materialize a lot sooner, but I think that you do give yourself, I mean, just like you were talking about, you've papered over more places. And so now the places where you need to go and maybe open yourself up to the possibility of whatever in outside free agency or even the draft is limited to what, left guard, maybe right tackle. You've limited those a little bit more. So I did like this. It does get dangerously close, though, to the run it back where you go, how much are you feeling all the things that you said about year over year, production or year over year improvement on the offensive line? That felt like talk, at least from my perspective before. It's feeling like the Bible for them a little bit more when you see another guy come back.
Yeah, the Ingram, I wondered what the price was going to be. I think this is appropriate, especially given what guards get on the market. So I'm okay with it. It's a guy you kick the tires on. Essentially, you kind of bailed yourself out with the Kenyon Green thing. You took a guy who was taken in the same draft, and you're starting him at guard, and it didn't seem like he really wanted to test things, and they like him. So hopefully his best ball is ahead. I will say that, like, hopefully his best football is ahead, because I don't know, like, if he stays the same, does that contract look good? I would lean towards but I think it's a fine deal. I don't think it's bad. I don't think you overpaid. So I had no problem with the Ingram signing. I think it's a fine deal. Good job.
It does feel like a true free agency the way the guards have gone. A younger player like him, because again, he's only been in the league a handful of years. A younger player like him probably gets a lot more money. We saw Zion Johnson, who frankly didn't play football as well as Ed Ingram last year, get nearly $50 million in free agency from the Browns. Of course, from a week ago, we know the Browns have no idea what they're doing on the offensive line. So that's not the best example in the world to use. But a young player like Ingram coming off good football, someone seems like they would have given him a little bit more money. So, hey, I want to stay here. Okay, cool. You want to take a few less bucks? Sure. All right, there you go. You're a starting right guard, and you got to play better than you did last year. It's kind of the approach. Sheldon Rankins, initially it was a much smaller deal. It ends up in like the $17 million over 2 years for Rankins, a little over $12 million guaranteed. He's going to start, I would think, a defensive tackle with Tommy Togiai, and that's what they finished the year with. And I guess they felt comfortable enough to put those two defensive tackles back out there. But the longer you bet on 30-plus-year-old defensive tackles, the more risk there's associated with it for me.
Yeah, but the only real slowdown for him was the year in Cincinnati where we come back around and we see, oh, yeah, he was dealing with something major. I thought that the way that he played last year, both in a physical aspect, but even more so in like the mental aspect of it, the ways in which we know that he brings a level of comfort to Will Anderson Jr., which I don't know how necessary that is, but I like. But then also there was a lot of, figuring out of how to make sure that quarterbacks aren't running on you and teams aren't able to do, have any level of semblance of the screen game. I put a lot of that at his feet. And I think that the leadership portions, if there's a building that cares about it, it's this one. I think that he brings a ton of that in addition to also still being good on the field. And so I find value there, especially with you had Naquan Jones, who's coming back, who was in the building, but he's still a little bit fresher. And the likelihood that you bring in a young cat in the draft who is going to have to assimilate, there's no better person in my mind to help them figure out what this system is, how to be a pro in the way that they want you to be a pro in this system than Sheldon Rankins, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to put it, Reggie, because like it's when you cover a team 24/7 and it's your livelihood, like a lot of times you're kind of balancing what they value, and it's not necessarily a tap out of what they value being the right approach. Like they might overvalue the whole mentorship and the right kind of guy type of thing. The Sheldon Rankins thing, I think, is just it seems a little bit rich, but last year they really, like, outside of him, they really didn't have very many options, and there's kind of a comfort level there. So we'll see. I do always get a little bit concerned when guys are like 32, 33, like how are they going to age and stuff like that. And I think much like with Schultz, who I'm sure we'll get to in a second, I think if you want these investments that some would say maybe you invested a little bit too high with where they are in their careers, but if you want them to age well, you're going to have to surround them with better, like, options, not necessarily on the line with Rankins, but as far as rotational guys, like you're going to have guys 3 and 4 on the depth chart at DT that can go in there and spell him, or maybe even you draft someone that's better than Sheldon Rankins to where that guy's getting an even larger split. With Dalton Schultz, if Dalton Schultz is asked to do this upcoming season what he was asked to do last year in the load that he had to carry based on the other tight ends, and we saw, Cody, we're at practice all the time, Dalton Schultz, like, he was putting himself through a lot just to be able to play. And some people will look at Dalton Schultz getting hurt the final game and say, well, that's unlucky. I don't know. Like, it feels like if you put yourself through that for 16, 17 weeks, like eventually it's inevitable that it happens. So they really, really, especially if you're going to have like a player like Cade Stover on the field 40% of the time, I think that's the number, 41% of the time, and you want to run these 2 tight end sets. If you want this Dalton Schultz thing to age well, then you're going to have to surround him with better help to where maybe he can even take a week off or something like that, to where there's like a comfort level, because I don't think that existed last year. So they're going to have to figure that out, and I think they're going to have to still get guys that maybe they feel comfortable replacing the Dalton Schultzes and the Sheldon Rankins with 2 years from now.
Yeah, that's always the positive to the defensive line conversation, especially at a little bit older defensive tackle like Rankins, is they play 8, 9 guys. They play 4 or 5 defensive tackles. And so older Rankins is not going out there and throwing 400 snaps, his way and expecting the most. Your D'Amico's kind of, pushing the gas when he needs to with his defensive linemen and things like that. The mentorship stuff, the leadership stuff, that's overrated. You got one of the best D-line coaches in football. He could teach anybody how to do anything, Rod Wright. So, maximize Rod Wright while you got him here, and maybe give him a little bit of something in the draft to coach up here and help you out on that defensive line. Landry, your point about Schultz, if they're putting a tight end on the field, they're putting Dalton Schultz on the field right now. I mean, you can't be putting Stover out there. That's a giveaway, dead tell on what you're going to do. And who even knows if Brevin Jordan's going to make it to the season or has anything left. So, yeah, you got to add a little bit more at the tight end room, and some interesting thoughts of the draft. And apparently, if you're a blocking tight end, business is good, because the free agency's been real nice to those guys. A couple of guys getting $8 million a year at the blocking tight end position. Charlie Kolar to the Chargers and Daniel Bellinger to the Tennessee Titans. So it's good business for the blocking tight ends. I want to get to one super chat here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what else is left to be done. Of course, the run it back scenario that the Texans have kind of approached here so far. We'll talk about that. Tell you a little bit about Prize Picks as well. Nomad Scott says, I'm really glad the Texans signed Robinson and Blankenship. I was really concerned about the defense's performance last season.
Yeah, absolutely. When you have an opportunity to make your superpower more superpower, you do that. Joking aside, like, this makes sense on the pass rush side of things, right? They just like throwing a whole bunch of dudes out there. And this is another dude that, you take a shot on. See if you could add another guy, especially when you talk about possibly getting a little younger at that. Because it is worth noting that you talk about age and throwing a whole bunch of guys out there. A lot of those dudes on the edge are getting older, right? They're not getting any younger, which of course applies to anybody, but it's even more so with that room. Throw a little youth bomb in there and see, how does he show up? And I was looking at some of his metrics, get off and pressure percentage are a lot of the same. It fits in with the same metrics of everybody that's in the room right now. So he has an equal footing. If he can get in there and look pretty good in camp, then you have an opportunity to have a younger guy in there that can help you continue to do what you do, throw guys out there in rotation in a good way. Blankenship we talked about. So I get it. It's just, again, it feels like we had dessert before we hit the real meat and potatoes of what it felt like this team needed.
Dessert first sounds very Cody Stutzish.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to elaborate on that. But yeah, the other thing about it is that they kind of have trust when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. So I could sit here and I could say I've never heard of this guy, but I can also sit here and say, well, they have trust when it comes to that. I think perhaps D'Amico Ryans in 2022, when the young man Robinson made his debut and he had 1.5 of his 3.5 career sacks. I think D'Amico was mesmerized in 2022, week 1. By the way, the most sacks for a debut by a Bears player since 1986. When he had that 1.5. So maybe D'Amico Ryans was kind of lost in the sauce. Oh, by the way, the Bears also won the game. So maybe D'Amico Ryans just remembered that and he said, you know what? I like that kid. Let's bring him in. Let's kick the tires.
Hey, this would be good trivia for everybody. 1.5 in his debut, right?
Yes.
How many since?
2.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe it was just about what's in front of you. Sometimes when you see it in front of you, it just hits a little bit harder.
Yeah. Okay. I like Scott's facetious conversation about the defense. Certainly, we appreciate the super chat there, and it gives us a chance to talk again about Reed Blankenship, because if you haven't heard, Reed Blankenship signed by the Texans, the former Eagles safety, 3 years, nearly $25 million, just over $16 million in guaranteed money.
Bringing authenticity. What'd you say?
It's not a bad price, like really,
no.
Some of the other stuff. It's not a terrible price.
If this happens on Thursday or Friday, after I hope that they have gotten a left guard, it feels a lot better, right? It just happens in an order that hits us a little better and brings some validity to the White Boy Wednesdays in the workout room. You feel me?
Fact.
You know what I mean?
Fact.
I like what we're doing.
The White Boy Wednesday with Dalton Schultz. Get a little bit of Reed Blankenship. You got to mix it in a little bit when you can.
We'll talk about a bunch of the Texans players that were on the team last year that are still on the team and some of the moves there here in just a moment. We've mentioned it. I don't think we've really beat around the bush here. Left guard is still the spot that you would look at and say, hey, there's not a guy that you're looking at here on this roster that you really want to play right now at left guard. The options are dwindling. Right before we hit the airwaves here on the Collective, which, by the way, subscribe, like, follow along. We put our Prize Picks entries on the community page each and every week. Hit Prize Picks, use the code Texans when you get signed up. Right before we hit the airwaves, Isaac Seumalo from the Pittsburgh Steelers, he signed up with the Arizona Cardinals, about $10 or so million a year. That was probably, to me, the best left guard left out there on the market. There's some other names out there still at left guard. Obviously, if guys are going to change positions, there's even some more names that have previously played right guard. Maybe they move over to left guard, but that's probably where most of us are looking and saying, hey, you'd love a body. And even if that body gets beat out in September by a rookie, you'd still love a veteran body there at left guard. That's at least where I'm falling right now.
No, I'm right there with you, man.
And that's where you're at. You don't want Jared Patterson being a left guard in non-emergency situations. And that's the one thing Caserio has actually said. So, he hasn't completely dismissed Jake Andrews as a starting center. But he has said that Jared Patterson's a 5 or 6 offensive lineman. So, I mean, he lets you know you don't want him at guard. But left guard is definitely the glaring hole. There's no doubt about that.
I do think there are some people that would like to see an upgrade at center. Again, options for that are dwindling as well. There was really, once Connor McGovern came back to the Bills before the free agency even started, there were 2 names. One was Tyler Linderbaum. It felt very fantasy pipe dream to even think about the Texans and Tyler Linderbaum. Then we all saw what he got paid. The other name was Cade Mays, $8 million a year to the Detroit Lions. The difference between Mays and Andrews is, 3 inches and about 35 pounds. And the results are pretty similar. I mean, Cade Mays wasn't even the starter for the Panthers last year. He ended up there after their starting center got hurt. But I saw a lot of outrage that Cade Mays was on the Detroit Lions and not on the Houston Texans. Any strong feelings about Cade Mays, Reggie?
I feel strongly that I think that the difference in $6.5 million, when you talk about the average annual value, probably does not meet the difference in play. I've started coming to the feeling last week that this could very well be a Jake Andrews hold down the fort and then a day 2 or day 3 center pick, kind of push him. I am very big on Dane Brugler's work at The Athletic, and one of the things that he said is that day 2, day 3 centers, they have the capability this year to be starters possibly. And I was like, oh, okay, you could sell me on the idea of pushing that. Now, of course, especially that's because the free agent market of centers, there's quality, but not nearly any quantity as you laid out. And very quickly, I did the math of there's like 11 or 12 teams that either need a center outright or would looking to upgrade. I was like, ooh, the math on this is pretty bad. And lo and behold, the math didn't work out in your favor.
Yeah, Brugler's who we lean on because it's a very strenuous process to watch all these prospects and stuff. So I've kind of narrowed it down to like guys that I trust, and there's a handful of guys. I'm sure it's along the same list, but yeah, when the beast comes out, that's kind of the one of the like extreme reading reference points that we have. And I have heard him say that about center. And the other thing about it kind of goes back to what I said about the safeties in like a different way. These teams that are signing centers are not going to be drafting centers. So that only increases kind of the opportunity, at least not early, like when you can pounce on it. So that kind of gives the Texans an opportunity. And I also think that while Nick Caserio, when I asked him about the center position at the combine, while he did not dismiss the possibility of going for an upgrade, I also think we can kind of read between the lines, and they do like Jake Andrews. Like, it's not, let's just be serious. Like, they've given us a lot of hints. Am I saying that they should? No, I'm not. But that they have shown us that they do like Jake Andrews.
I mean, Caserio either told on themselves or made up an injury for Jake Andrews last year. Oh, he played on one leg. Okay, well, he was never on the injury report. So either that injury was hidden, which that's kind of what Patriots people do. They hide injuries. Or that's a total lie to excuse some of his play. Long story short, they got to play better at center next year. If it's Jake Andrews, if it's Ethan Posich, who's a free agent, veteran, if it's a rookie that they draft, they've got to be better at center. And they seem to value a little bit of experience, or at least being able to handle a lot. So if you have a young guy who's a rookie who can handle a lot right away, that maybe did some of that stuff in college, cool, draft him and stick him in there at center and hope he plays better than Jake Andrews. If Andrews wasn't healthy last year and plays better and has a little bit more understanding, okay, cool, he's got to play better than he did last year. We're all sitting here lamenting that they didn't upgrade one of the offensive line positions that they very much needed to upgrade.
And I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm carrying water, but there is something to be said about the center position isn't notoriously the most physical position anyways. Right. I guess the characteristic about centers that are used to kind of create delineation between one or another is between the ears. And Jake Andrews has demonstrated at least be solid enough at that. The physicality does need to be much better. And I don't even know where he finds that at. So, but I think the point being for me, you look at a dude like Tyler Linderbaum, who actually does have some of the physicality, and he ends up getting $27 million. Like, that is ultimately the way that this happens. So, your center, you can make them a little bit better, or at least definitely more palatable, by having the two dudes next to him, the bouncers next to him, being big bad mofos and having duos as you get forward, which is why, again, it is so much more important, especially bringing back Ed Ingram, where you know what that physicality is. You need somebody on the other side who is absolutely somebody that can throw somebody out the club in order to make, one, obviously the left side of your line is strong, but then two, to make Jake Andrews a much better center physically by having another dude next to him that can do it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like you talked about the if Jake Andrews, if they roll out the same version of Jake Andrews next year that they did last year, they're not going to reach their ultimate potential. Like, he's got to be. It has to happen. Same thing with TE2. It has to happen. So I agree with you, Reggie. I think offensive lineman, I think it's kind of an underrated element where, like, Trent Williams can make Laken Tomlinson a Pro Bowler. And like, you see some offensive linemen that are really good, and then as soon as they get paid and leave, they're not the same. It's just non-negotiable when it comes to Jake Andrews.
It's got to be better at center, and they got to figure out who the left guard is, because they don't have that guy currently on the roster. I think with some of the guys that came back, maybe you could go a little bit lower on the priority list of maybe some depth at defensive tackle or depth at linebacker. If they wanted to add a outside speed guy at wide receiver or a blocking forward tight end, you wouldn't hurt my feelings with that. But the shopping list is pretty small from a priority standpoint because of some of the guys that they have brought back. At least it is for me. Is there anything that you guys are dying to see him in the next couple of days go out there and pluck beyond what we've talked about here in the past couple of minutes?
I don't even know that they need a list at this point. Like, when it goes to the draft, like, sometimes you just go to the grocery store and if something piques your interest, you go ahead and get it. I don't know that they need to be list shopping at this point. I think they need to be swinging for the fences, specifically in the draft. And we're not fully in draft mode. I think we get to that point probably after this year, after this week, because we can kind of shape it up. But I do think they need to be a little bit more open-minded at wide receiver than I initially thought. Like, I think that, like, on day two, if the opportunity presents itself, the guy that I've been kind of thinking of, and I'm kind of getting off in the sticks here, is like Zachariah Branch. They say that he's too much of a screen guy. My thing is good. They need a screen guy, and they need speed. And then there's probably some unrealized potential when it comes to routes. Like if he's there on their third and fourth pick, I think they should be open to that. And that's kind of what I like about them filling out the lineup card right now. As far as looking at like certain free agents and saying they got to do this or that, like, what are we asking them to do when we say they need to get a left guard? I'm sure they need to bring a body in, but like, are we basically just saying bring back another Laken Tomlinson and then
no?
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you don't draft a Tate Ratledge, then that's where your regret is. Like, I think they got to take advantage of the left guard, but I don't know that there's anyone there that's like you're just going to feel fantastic about.
I mean, that's fair, but I think the tough part is that with the way that this free agency has gone, the names that I'm looking at are dudes that are older, but I think that you can get a dude who is older that you're not expecting to be there for a long time, but he can be a good time. Like, I don't know if he's even going to play this year, but a Joel Bitonio, right? You can see him throw people out the club here and there. Legitimately, this is my qualifier. Can you throw somebody out the club? Joel Bitonio, yes. Kevin Zeitler, yes. I saw a little Wyatt Teller in there throwing dudes out the club, right? I need those, right? I need that. It's not just a dude who can get in here and do this, or maybe even, are you willing to take a flyer on a dude who was injured all of last year, but maybe can make his way back in Elijah Vera Tucker? But I need somebody who I know can throw somebody out the club. If they come out and get beat by a better young guy, sounds great. But I need a guarantee, again, because circumstances have put you in a place where you're probably rolling with Jake Andrews. And now you make it so that these knock-on effects make it even more important that you have strength at that position, in my opinion.
I do wonder if they make a veteran investment, if there is that Laken Tomlinson level buffer where it's like, oh, he's really bad, but we're not going to replace him. It's like, if you have a guy in the building that could replace him, if your investment at guard isn't good, like maybe that's a highly drafted rookie, and then maybe they pull that parachute on the veteran quicker. If it is an older guy, if it is a shorter term thing. So I think you could go with a bridge guy and hope he gets beat out by a rookie at left guard. And it's not the worst plan at left guard, but we've heard better.
I mean, that's what happened at left tackle last year, right? It was supposed to be Cam Robinson. All of a sudden, this Ariante Ursery works better. All right, Cam, thanks for stopping by the booth, right? You hope that they go that way as opposed to the Laken Tomlinson way, and the Laken Tomlinson way was, well, who's going to take this shot, right? We see this in basketball all the time where a really good player just doesn't pass the ball, and you can't blame him because who am I passing the ball to, right? Who else is better to take this shot? Sad as it was to say, it did feel kind of like that at left guard last year. You can't say that at tackle. So I'm hoping that that's the way that it goes, where you get somebody who, if he's got to be it, cool. But then if it's like, hey, this isn't working, we got a young guy who's pushing him to take that spot.
Yeah, the Bitonio thing is interesting. And then Teller seems like a name that's been brought up quite often when it comes to guys that you could potentially bring in. I will say though, and I think it might have something to do with the fact that I think any logical person last year wasn't betting on Trent Brown doing what he did. And even though he got hurt, I think what he gave you was well worth up to $3 million, like way more. You can make a case that was worth the contract that he got this year. Do you think that there's too much of a comfort level with Trent Brown right now? And we've kind of just completely flipped. I think it was logical, healthy skepticism. And since he just kind of proved it wrong, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, they're going to trot Trent Brown out there and start him at right tackle. Does that not make you a little bit nervous?
Yeah, for the 10 games or so that he's not available, yeah, it does make me nervous. If Trent Brown's plan A, you better have one hell of a plan B. And hopefully that plan B is the 28th or 38th overall pick, and it's a tackle that you feel good about long term. Because you got to play 20 games to win the Super Bowl. Trent Brown didn't play 20 games. It just that the history dictates he's not playing 20 games. So you need to have a good plan B. And that's a big element of the kind of the run it back conversation, is like, if that guy doesn't work out or that guy seems to be, poor investment, what did you do to kind of make up for it? And I think that's something we want to get into a little bit more. A super chat, prize picks, we'll get into that. Papa Wiggs, would you rather have a top 10 defense and a top 15 offense, or the top defense and a bottom offense?
Oh man, give me the split, right? Give me something where I can make this happen. at that level. You need both sides of the football, right? The whole defense wins championships thing does not hold in and of itself. It's all, it's all in conversation with one another. And so you need to be able to stop teams from scoring points. You need to be able to score points. And I feel like that's probably the metric. I mean, we've seen a number of teams that are really fun, but really ugly. Namely, last year, the Cowboys were one of those. Incredible offense. Defense was terrible. And what did that get them, right? And I mean, I'm sure there's numerous examples that we can throw out there. It's just not going to happen. I mean, hell, you saw with this Texans team last year. And even then, it was hair pulling the way that the offense let the defense down. And that was with a defense that felt otherworldly.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine this being like a fringe top 10 defense. So this hypothetical is kind of tough for me to even imagine. Like they're just too good and too talented on defense. But I don't think you want to have a bottom anything at all. So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll meet in the middle. But even with this defense, it's hard for me to imagine them being like a fringe top 10.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're going to have that top defense, better make sure you got a big time kicker. And the Texans had just that. When's Kaimi asking for an extension, by the way? That's got to be coming down any day now. Kaimi's been pretty good to me when I did more in 1.5 field goals for him each and every week in Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy with our friends at Prize Picks. It is so easy to play more or less on given stats, points, rebounds, assists. Now that's just basketball. You've got baseball. You've got tennis. You've got soccer, college basketball, MMA even. Like I dabbled this weekend and cost the collective. It did not go well. Yeah, I didn't expect that one of the most prolific strikers was going to get just laid on like a blanket. But that's what happens sometimes in the MMA world. Was hoping for some more significant strikes. There were a lot less significant strikes. But it's very easy to put a lineup together, and when you do, you can use our code Texans, and you'll play your first 5 and get $50 headed your way in free lineups. Use our code Texans over there on Prize Picks. We put an entry together as a squad each and every week. We put it on the community page here of the channel, so you can check that out. And you can play along with us, or sometimes you fade the collective, and it's been successful in the past. So there we are. And with Prize Picks, more or less, use the code Texans, and you will find yourself with $50 in free lineups headed your way. Too much run it back is maybe where the Texans are. EJ Speed's back. MJ Stewart's back. Sheldon Rankins is back. Ed Ingram's back. They extended Danielle Hunter for 1 more year. They extended Dalton Schultz for 1 more year. They had a scenario where they've avoided trying to improve when there's maybe just some comfort in what they have and trying to maximize what they do have. You guys in the too much run it back category?
We're getting close, at least on one side of the football. I think you guys are very big on the leeway that the defense has earned in the way that they, assess, the way that they're able to draw out the best out of players. I'm willing to give them that, especially because I believe strongly in the concept of institutional knowledge. And on this defense, there is a culture, and they understand that culture, and they play well to that culture. If y'all want to bring some people back, especially EJ Speed, played with great trigger, great discipline, really aggressive, physical, fit all that swarm. Fantastic. We've talked about Sheldon Rankins. We can talk about all those things. The running back on offense is really uncomfortable because, again, even if we wanted to break the offense into passing and rushing, past week 4, it was like a 11 in DVOA passing wise. Like, that is something that you could talk yourself into. Obviously, we'd like it to be better, more explosive, so on. But you could talk yourself into it. We're talking about 29th in rushing on this defense in DVOA after week 4. That is nowhere near close enough. Landry, you talking about not having anything bottom? That is decidedly bottom. And so bringing in David Montgomery isn't enough to change that. This offensive line needs to be a lot better. And I saw Ed Ingram come back, and I was like, cool, that he was probably the best of your linemen. But even your linemen that were good, it made me stop and think, even when it was going well, when we were talking good about, oh, man, this offensive line is finding some level of cohesion. It wasn't a great offensive line. I'm not even sure how much we could call it a good offensive line. It was passable. And so that needed to be an improvement. And so the idea that you're getting close to run it back is really uncomfortable, because how much improvement can you expect if you're just changing out one piece, maybe 2 pieces? Right? That is the thing that is really uncomfortable. So I don't know if I can definitively say that it's too much on the offensive side, but it is getting uncomfortable when we really think about it.
Yeah, and I think that I don't think that I think the end of the season with CJ Stroud, I think it prevented Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans from maybe some, I don't want to say humility, but like some humbling as to what the weaknesses of the football team were. Because I think there's a chance that if they advance and face the Denver Broncos, and for sure if they go to the Super Bowl, the offensive line gets exposed. And that's the last thing we see. Much like the example I used earlier today on SNL was like when the Chiefs lost to the Eagles, it was very apparent what they needed to do and what needed to be done. But I think the way in which CJ Stroud finished the season, first of all, it gave you logical questions about CJ Stroud and where he's at and what he can be and what the next step is and the investment and all that. I think it also kind of, the way that Caserio kind of handled himself at the combine, it almost feels like he thought that he had like the perfect team around him. Like he was taking exceptions. I don't know what film you're watching about the offensive line, or, you know, Dalton Schultz had a record-setting season. I don't know if you saw that. And like all the other stuff that he said. And it just kind of makes you like wonder, okay, did maybe D'Amico and Nick Caserio kind of lose grasp of the don't ignore in victory what you would not ignore in defeat type of thing, and CJ Stroud kind of took that away from him? Because I think there is a chance that they go to Denver and Denver's D-line just completely manhandles them the second time around, and that damn sure would have happened in Seattle for a second time. And then I think the narrative would have been, they got to fix this offensive line if they want to take the ultimate step. I think Nick Caserio looks at it now as it's all about the quarterback, which to a certain point it is. But I think it maybe kind of blinded him towards what this football team is or isn't. There was definitely improvement, but what standard are you holding yourself to? Like, what was the other option? Like, yeah, just because you improve doesn't mean that you just run it back and stay that way. You got to be a little bit proactive.
Yeah, and I do think planning for no improvement or planning for regression on some of the avenues that they've taken is something that Caserio's got to do as he continues to fine-tune this roster. Like we talked about Trent Brown. If he's your starting right tackle, you have to have a good backup. And that backup's not Blake Fisher. They wouldn't even put Blake Fisher on the field when Brown was hurt last year. Why would they trust him again? So you have to have a good backup if Trent Brown's going to be your starting right tackle. If you're going to go have EJ Speed be your third linebacker, okay, well, if he's the same guy or not as good, then hopefully you've got a long-term option behind him that can step up. So, you know, Sheldon Rankins, if he's not as good, hopefully you've got somebody that can take some of his reps away and help you. It still necessitates some investment either with other veterans or it necessitates some draft picks at some of those spots. Tight end, they're not good enough at tight end right now. They're just not. They could use some unique skills over on wide receiver and running back from a speed standpoint. They don't have a lot of true speed on this team. They're a pretty slow football team. So if you had some unique skills at tight end behind Dalton Schultz, at wide receiver, at running back that you don't currently have, like that would make me feel better about, okay, cool. Like, yeah, Brevin Jordan's in here, whatever happens, cool story. Kate Stover's here. Maybe he improves, or maybe he's actually a farmer that cosplays a football player. It's like, oh, well, they drafted a guy who could block really well, or they signed a guy who could block really well at tight end, and you know he's going to be here. You know he's going to be on the team and give you that at least. Like there's some stuff around the edges, because if they want to sit here every week and tell us it's not about one guy when we watch the quarterback wet the bed in the playoffs, then you better make sure the other 52 are as good as freaking possible. And there's still some things to add to make sure that 52 is still as good as it can be.
And the funny thing is, even if it is about one guy, if that one guy is the quarterback, you know what helps the quarterback? Some protection and time to throw. You know what helps the quarterback? A run game that's capable to be leaned on, right? Like these are things that we talk about. You know what helps the quarterback? The skill sets to be able to lean on those guys, maybe yak, where you just get the ball out to them and let that guy do the work. Ultimately, these are all things that, again, these things are not mutually exclusive. It's a football team. These things all have multiplying effects on each other. And so the idea even that maybe they could lean on CJ Stroud and his failure in the postseason as a singular cause of this would be absurd, right? The whole thing about this offensive line is CJ Stroud seemed to go into business for himself. And it felt like, at least to me, and maybe not to everybody else, but at least to me, like he felt he needed to go over and above what else was there. If you need to give him confidence, you need to build that offensive line in a place where he has confidence, and maybe in a place where he does not have to get the ball out in 0.5 seconds in order for it to be useful. Like, these are things that all tie together. And I think it would be absurd if that is indeed the thought process that they have, that they would act on it. I think that there's a level of planned obsolescence that you need to go to, even if you're not going to go to a direct switching out of making this guy better, having a better guy at this spot. Then if there's going to be some run it back to it, the dude behind that guy needs to be someone who you are planning on taking his job, right? There needs to be planned obsolescence. Yes, Trent Brown's going to start, but ain't no way 6 weeks into the season that he hasn't had this job took. That's the level of thinking that you need to have, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think you put it really well last week, and I think there's times where we've watched games and kind of said it without presenting it as well as you did, Reggie, is just because you're telling the quarterback to get rid of the ball quicker doesn't necessarily mean that the offensive line is blocking better. And I think the epitome of that was the Chargers game, where I heard Blake Fisher held up, he didn't allow a sack. Well, it kind of seemed like as soon as CJ Stroud saw even the guy's right shoulder that Blake Fisher was blocking, he was getting rid of the ball relatively quickly. So it kind of felt like there was a little bit of help there. But to go back to what you said earlier about run it back and stuff, I think a lot of times it's good to be comfortable. I think being comfortable can be a good thing, but I also think comfort can make you lazy. And I think the comfort can also make you kind of not maximize your skills and potential. And I think one of the super skills that DeMeco Ryans has, and this defense really, is they're able to find guys that maybe you don't necessarily think will be contributors as long as they are. Like they find Tommy Togiai, they found Derek Barnett, they maximized what Henry To'o was. Azeez Al-Shire's taken his game to the next level with them. And it feels like they almost just get comfortable with these guys, and they almost eliminate the skill that they have, which we'll probably still see when rookies come into the building and all that on that side of the rock. But it is when you're paying EJ Speed, what you're paying EJ Speed, it just feels like you're kind of sleeping on your ability to find the next EJ Speed or find the next Sheldon Rankins. And a lot of times, you might say, well, it's a few $1 million. Few $1 million is something that you can do a lot. You can do a lot with, especially when your offense is what it is and they have the holes that they have. So it's just weird when overpaying veteran defensive guys, it just doesn't feel like something that this defense, with how good the coaching staff is and how good their body of work is something that they should do. You can talk me into Ed Ingram, Trent Brown, pay him. You can Dalton Schultz, okay, whatever. But on defense, it just feels strange because on one hand they have the benefit of the doubt, but on the other hand, when you're paying these guys into their 30s, way more money than they would get on the market, it just feels like you're kind of eliminating one of your super skills. And maybe it's because it's comfortable. Maybe it's because it's a necessity and they know what they're talking about. And I don't know what the F I'm talking about. Who knows?
Yeah, that's the thing, is they have the benefit of the doubt on defense. I wish they'd use it a little bit more. Hey, go out there and get a linebacker that's a little bit cheaper than EJ Speed that maybe has a better top end. Go out there and get a defensive tackle that's maybe a little bit younger than Sheldon Rankins and has potentially a better top end if you coach him up and it works out. I think it behooved them to use that little bit of benefit of the doubt from time to time. And then I could also sit here and say, well, if they looked at the free agent linebacker market and decided EJ Speed needed to be linebacker 3, I guess, though, the side of the ball, though, on offense, they have no benefit of the doubt. They spent a gazillion dollars last year and got basically nothing out of it. Their bargain investment in Trent Brown halfway through the season became the best offensive lineman that they added via free agency. So, they spent, $13 million on Cam Robinson, $5 million on Laken Tomlinson. That got them nowhere. It got a bad offensive line play. Is what it got him. And then Cam Robinson got him a conditional 7th or whatever the hell he ended up getting them. So, yeah, it is funny that they don't churn as much as they could or maybe should on defense. But at the same time, it's well, they think that's the best option. It's worked out over there, so go ahead and keep giving it a crack at it.
It's also a good point because it feels like so many of the things that they do that are player focused, this is the time of year where you should eat off of that, right? The things in which they do where they protect their players, the things in which they do where they have a great ecosystem that dudes like being here, the things that they do where they kind of overpay a little bit and don't make negotiations hard. It feels like that's where you should free agency be able to go and get a guy who's willing to choose you over somewhere else because they like where you are. And it doesn't feel like they give themselves enough opportunities to eat off of that, assuming that would be there for them to, eat off of.
Gentlemen, a super chat that I want to get to, and then we'll talk about some of these moves that have the biggest ripple effect or ramifications when it comes to the Texans. Papa Wiggs, oh boy. Probably playing Madden a little bit, but trade Will Anderson. Use all the draft capital to solidify the offense. Defense will be really good still, and offense is way better. You hope. Laughing emoji.
You want to trade Toro too?
I'm not. Just move the team while you're doing it, I guess. Just go ahead and send them to Memphis, and Tennessee can have another team from Houston. What are you doing, Papa Wiggs?
Yeah, it's like at that point, trade D'Amico too. Like, what are we doing?
The Arizona Cardinals would have given you 2 first-round picks for D'Amico Ryans.
Like at this point, what we're doing is the old Family Guy bit where it's like this could be anything, even Will Anderson Jr. Yeah, like this is what you look for. This is it. You live in the life, baby.
Yeah, that is a little madness, Papa Wiggs. We appreciate the super chat. Thank you for
absolutely
spending the time to watch the show and interact. One small thing. Christian Harris over to the Atlanta Falcons. The mystery injury before the mystery injury of Joe Mixon. Christian Harris never recovered. See you later. Nobody was lamenting his loss here, but I do want to note that.
RIP to my penny stock. It was a lot last year. I bought a lot of Christian Harris penny stock. So RIP to he. I would think that if he were the same player that he was in 2023, he would have gotten on the field last year, but you never know.
Yep. Moves across the league, or even perhaps that the Texans made, that you feel like have the biggest ramifications or alters maybe the way that you feel like the Texans operated. I will say that I thought Kenneth Walker was going to get far more money than he did with the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a great pickup for the Chiefs. He checks in at just under $15 million in average annual value. It was pitched to me by the prognosticators that it was going to be closer to $17, $18 million in average annual value. And I thought perhaps the Texans decided on David Montgomery over a free agent pursuit because they thought Kenneth Walker was going to be super expensive. He's expensive, but he's not as expensive as I thought he was going to be. So I thought that was one that kind of had a little bit of a ripple. The Texans had already made their decision, obviously. But Kenneth Walker checked in a little bit less than I expected him to get from a free agency standpoint. Oh, by the way, the Kansas City Chiefs now can run the football as well. So I thought that had a little bit of a ripple effect across the AFC, more so than some of the other moves. Is there anything that kind of was on you guys' radar from this really impacted things in the AFC, impacted the Texans with, their commitment to a player here or there?
I mean, I'm working on a take where it feels like the Titans are very much trying to be this year's Patriots. That's I'm thinking of, but that's a group of picks. If I'm doing, or a group of moves, if I'm doing a singular move, I will be the basic bitch in this. Give me the Tyler Linderbaum. If no other reason, then that is a Baltimore Ravens team that we were looking at. Like, hey, maybe they come back at the top of this and look scary. They just made a big move for Max Crosby, and I was like, all right, are they going to be all in to the point where they need, where they're just going to push this all? And I have questions about what this offense actually looks like. I don't know that we could say it definitively that this is going to look be the same type of scary. Now, Lamar Jackson is back there. There is a level of scary to it, but is it at that same level where it's terrifying? I don't know. And I think that organizational piece that Tyler Linderbaum is the reason why we were all clamoring and salivating over him. I think losing that could be meaningful for the Baltimore Ravens and maybe make it so that they're not as good at the top of the AFC. And that's one fewer team if that does go that way.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because they desperately needed to be able to rush the passer. And we know Max Crosby can rush the passer, but they also traded 2 draft picks and they lost their starting center, like you said. So there's kind of like a cancel out. Kansas City to me is they're kind of trying to maintain their level of excellence. It's kind of like when Tom Brady tore his ACL in New England, and it was really the Gronk draft that kind of revived Tom Brady when they got Gronk and they got Aaron Hernandez, and it kind of changed the second or third Tom Brady run, whatever you want to call it. So I think Kansas City getting Walker is interesting on top of the draft equity that they've added. But I think in the division, I don't really know what the Colts are doing. they've been in quarterback hell for a long time. And Alec Pierce, like for $30 million, I actually was kind of tipping the cap to Indianapolis when it looked like they were going to let him test the market and let someone else do that. And then not only did they bring him back, next thing you know, I look up and they let Michael Pittman Jr. go. So I'm like, okay, this guy's been pretty consistent. He's been a big part of what you do. And you're bringing in Alec Pierce and you're saying goodbye to Michael Pittman Jr. So I don't know what the hell Indianapolis is doing. I'm with you on Tennessee. It's an interesting thing when you bring up, this year's Patriots. I think we need to keep a close eye on what Tennessee is doing. And I think Jacksonville, they didn't really miss a beat. They haven't done anything too crazy. They did lose ETN. I think they can be fine in replacing him. But I think Kansas City, you got to keep an eye on Kansas City big time, especially once the draft comes around. I'm very intrigued to see what they're going to do.
The interesting thing to me with the Jacksonville Jaguars is the reporting that they were in on Max Crosby. Obviously, they didn't go as far as the Ravens. And that makes me go, oh, okay, they are serious, which, I mean, we kind of had a feeling of, but that's a different level of serious.
Well, Stutz threw out another name that he thinks that maybe they look at. And I don't know where the hell this is coming from, but this would probably be, to me, it's scarier than Max Crosby. I just don't know if they would be able to pull it off.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see or have heard that the Jaguars are chasing Jalen Carter and the Philadelphia Eagles would be trading Jalen Carter. They made their big investment in Jordan Davis, making him one of the highest paid defensive tackles. And it does not feel like, and I get it that Philadelphia looks like they have unlimited money. And they kick the can down the road more than anybody. I understand it. But it feels like with, maybe some of the personality spits on a guy and then, as the game started, gets kicked out, and the money commitment maybe associated with that guy. If they move to AJ Brown, then maybe all of a sudden Brian Thomas Jr. and some draft picks could get Jalen Carter to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And oh boy, I'm glad you invested in the interior offensive line, Houston. Oh, wait, because that would be Jalen Carter in Jacksonville. It's Jeffrey Simmons and John Franklin Myers in Tennessee. Yep. Oh, by the way, before all these guys were awesome at defensive tackle, DeForest Buckner was eating people's lunch at defensive tackle, and he's still there in Indianapolis. So if it is Jake Andrews and Ed Ingram and cap space at left guard, I tip my cap to you because it could be Jalen Carter, Jeffrey Simmons and company, and DeForest Buckner on your 6-game schedule every year for the next couple of years. So
maybe a tire kick of Brian Thomas Jr. Throw that in there.
Yeah. It's just, it's just
AJ Brown goes somewhere else in the division. We're just playing Madden now.
Yeah. I mean, look, it doesn't feel like Jacksonville is afraid to make a big, scary move and take a big risk. And so I just wouldn't put them out of it when it comes to adding a significant defender if Philadelphia ended up being sellers. So, but they've been quieter than the Texans in free agency so far, and they haven't done anything. Jacksonville has, and then Indianapolis. Hard to figure out what they got going on. Good luck with Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce making $55 million combined, or whatever it is, $65 million combined.
That's a winning formula, I've heard. I think that's how that goes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, just while you were talking about defensive line, I was reminded by the fact that, obviously Max Crosby joins the Ravens. You know who faces the AFC North this year?
The Houston Texans.
So, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Highsmith, all them fellas. Mm-hmm. Let's have fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the Baltimore Ravens come to Houston. The Bills come to Houston again. You actually finally missed the Chiefs. They're finally not on the schedule, but
God bless.
My assumption is that you're going to see them in the playoffs if you go. Somebody's going to see them in the playoffs because I don't think they're staying down for long over there in Kansas City. All right, gentlemen, that's Texans Collective. Reggie, tell the folks where they can find you.
10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Loop on Sports Radio 610.
It's Landry Locker of the Locker Room, 10:30 each and every night. And, of course, SNL with myself at 4 o'clock each and every weekday as well. And Landry Friday will be at Spanky's, recapping everything that goes down with free agency between now and then and getting the folks ready for the draft. Tell the people about the gloriousness that is Spanky's.
Yeah, we'll be there. Homemade dough, homemade sauce, best happy hour in town. Most underrated wings in town, too, I will say myself. Spanky's. See you there. Charlestown.
All right, so give us a like and subscribe.
Too.
What's that?
Cody cheats the system when it comes to the pizza, too. The half and half.
The half and half pizza is an underrated move that I do.
With different sauces on the halves, I must say. Yeah, they'll do it for you.
They must really like you.
They won't charge it extra. Yeah,
that's not a Cody Stutes thing. That's a anybody that comes into Spanky's thing. If you want to go half and half, you want to go barbecue chicken pizza on one side and a Hawaiian on the other, they'll do that for you. It's not just to do it for me. That's not an
just make sure you drop Cody Stutes' name. That's all.
No, that's fine if you want to do that.
Like, I got you. I see what you're doing.
Cody and Landry sent me. Now give me that half and half pizza. Give us a like, give us a subscribe here. Of course, we'll have the Prize Picks entry on the community page this week. And when you sign up for Prize Picks, use that code Texans. You play your first $5, win or lose. You're going to get $50 in free lineups headed your way. And Texans Collective will be headed your way next week at 6 o'clock. You do not want to miss out on that. So subscribe to the page so you don't miss out on it. And this is where Pendergast would tell you, you need to end stream.